Valentine's Day, a holiday built on flowers, chocolates, and the promise of romance. A time to turn unrequited love into requited love. A time to celebrate a life's worth of companionship. But for some, love isn't just a greeting card sentiment. For some, it's an all-consuming fire, a hearty lust that burns everything in its path. In the happy little mining town of Valentine, Bluffs, a killer long thought dead has made it their personal mission to transform Valentine's Day into a day of fear and dread, proving that obsession and devotion can be just as deadly as any ghost story or urban legend. That man's name is Harry Warden, and his heart is set on one thing and one thing only. What you're about to see and hear was classified long ago, collected in secret, and preserved for posterity in the Slasher Collective. Welcome back to the Haddonfield Registry. I'm your host, Mr. October, aka Slasher with an X. Today we continue our Slasher Collective series, where we examine horror's most infamous slasher villains, covering their origins, their designs, their abilities, and how deadly they are. For this episode, we're heading north of the border to examine a killer whose rampage was fueled not by supernatural evil, but by industrial negligence and the kind of trauma that festers in the dark. Harry Warden, the Mad Miner. Now, before we dive in, it's worth noting that Harry Warden's legacy is a bit complicated. The original Harry died in 1976, but his influence, his rage, lived on through another. For the purposes of this analysis, we'll be examining the miner as he appears in the 1981 killings, while also acknowledging the historical Harry that inspired the carnage. Think of it as examining both the myth and the man who became the myth. The miner's design is rather unique among his slasher brethren, in that his costume is made up primarily of his work clothes. Harry Warden, as well as the man who would go on to utilize his identity in the 1981 Valentine Bluff killings, were both miners, employed by the Hannigan Mining Company, and as such, the costume is meant to be something he could have pulled right out of his work locker. He wears a pair of dark navy utility coveralls and a pair of black leather lace-up work boots. To further hide his identity, he's added a balaclava face mask and a pair of black leather gauntlet-style gloves to the ensemble. He wears both a waist belt and a miner's belt, the former to keep the coveralls fitted tightly to allow greater range of motion, and the latter to hang his tools from, namely his pickaxe, the battery for his wheat light, his self-rescuer, and whatever other situational items he may deem necessary to bring to a kill. Though his mask is often erroneously referred to as a gas mask, it's actually a rebreather mask, with the hose running down to the self-rescuer on his hip. Out of universe, the mask is a slightly modified MSA Chemox rebreather, a closed-circuit self-contained oxygen rebreather designed in the 40s specifically for mining and heavy industrial work. To achieve the desired look in the film, the exhalation and inhalation ports were rotated a quarter of a turn, and several corrugated hoses were daisy-chained to allow it to run from the rotated valve to the self-rescuer affixed to his tool belt. Additionally, the individual lenses were darkened to hide the wearer's identity, and the diaphragm has been swapped out. His mask is the most essential element of his costume. The rebreather's wide, dark-tinted circular lenses and the large diaphragm give off an insectoid appearance, similar to that of a mosquito, intensifying the alien imagery of the miner. Outside of these iconic elements, he also sports a typical thermoplastic hard hat, which his wheat light sits on. And that wheat light isn't just for show. In the pitch-black tunnels of the Hannigan mines, that single beam cutting through the darkness becomes a harbinger of death, the last thing his victims see before the pickaxe comes down on them. Not much is known of Harry Warden's life prior to his time as the Mad Miner, but by all accounts, it had been as simple and mundane as any of the other miners from Valentine Bluffs. Upon graduating, he began working at the Hannigan mines until a tragic cave-in occurred on Valentine's Day, 1960. The town of Valentine Bluffs had been known for their annual Valentine's Day dance, a tradition that stretched back a century. Despite this, 7 miners had yet to arrive that night, 5 of them still toiling down below. The 2 supervisors up top, impatient and not wanting to miss the festivities, decided not to wait for the other 5 still underground, and in their haste to leave, failed to ensure safe methane levels in the tunnels. As a result, one of the miners' carbide lanterns ignited the gas, triggering a massive explosion that shook the reinforced tunnel walls, loosening the timber sets and caving the 5 men inside. The town spent 6 weeks digging to reach the men, only finding one, Harry Warden. He had fed off the other 4 miners to sustain himself, which, combined with the isolation and injuries, drove the man insane. He would spend a year in the Eastfield State Mental Hospital and escape just 1 year later, on Valentine's Day 1961, where he set out to kill the 2 supervisors as revenge for allowing the accident to occur in the first place. He then tore into the men's chests and tore their hearts out, planting them within heart-shaped candy boxes for the Valentine's Day partygoers to find. With the boxes came a warning: never throw another Valentine's Day party, or he would return. Despite the ominous warning, Harry wouldn't live to make good on these threats, as he would pass away in the Eastfield State Hospital in 1976. However, his legacy would live on, for one of the supervisor's sons bore witness to his father's murder in 1961, even getting splashed with his father's blood while Harry tore the man's heart from his twisted and broken ribcage. This boy would harbor a darkness within him over the next 19 years until it was unleashed in 1981, triggered by a failing domestic relationship and the town's decision to resurrect the Valentine's Day dance after 2 decades of respectful silence. This boy, now a man working the mines like Harry, would similarly don his uniform and mining gear, transforming himself into the mythical Mad Miner, where he then set out to renew the town's fading fears. First, an unnamed woman, whose heart was torn from her chest and stuffed in a candy box. Then, the owner of the town's laundrette and head planner of that year's Valentine's Day dance, an older woman by the name of Mabel. This second death would prove enough to force the police chief's hand, who shut down the festivities and forbade any other parties. But the youth of Valentine Bluffs, the younger miners and their girlfriends, instead chose to stage a party at the mines themselves in secret. Harry's replacement feigned innocence among his peers and went along with these new secret party plans, killing another 7 people before a fellow miner, T.J. Hanniger, heir to the Hanniger mines themselves, stopped him. The impersonator followed T.J. into a volatile section of the mines, who, along with Sarah, the woman whom the impersonator had a romantic falling out with, fought back against the Mad Miner. This scuffle would prove too much for the rickety wooden beams, and they collapsed on top of him, pinning his arm under loose rock. As the town's miners and police officers arrived to assist, all they would find was the impersonator's arm, severed at the elbow with a hunting knife. From deep within the caved-in tunnel, the impersonator cackled, warning that he and the real Harry Warden would be coming back, before asking Sarah to be his bloody Valentine. The last anyone saw of the impersonator was his wheat light slowly fading into the darkness, never to be seen again. Status: neutralized. The miner is what we classify as a retaliator, a slasher whose killing spree is born from a specific grievance, real or perceived, and who targets those that they deem responsible for their suffering. Unlike stalkers who seem to treat their murderers as sport, or brutes who typically defend their territory, retaliators are mission-driven. They have a point to prove, and they'll carve it in as many bodies as necessary to make it stick. In this case, both miners' goals was to end the annual Valentine's Day dance. The miner operates with the precision and patience of someone intimately familiar with their hunting ground, given that he would know these mines inside and out. They act as both a fortress and a labyrinth. Every tunnel, every shaft, every darkened corner is committed to memory, giving him a tactical advantage that's damn near impossible to overcome. His kills are brutal and personal. The pickaxe is his weapon of choice, and he wields it with the expertise of a man who spent years swinging it for a living. Whether it's a downward strike to the chest, a horizontal swing to the torso, or an upward thrust through the jaw, every blow is delivered with devastating efficiency and accuracy. The pickaxe itself is a war-era, small-bladed pickaxe, known for having smaller picks on either side that are relatively straight compared to conventional pickaxes. These were easier to use and easier to carry on the belt, both being advantages the killer would need. The miner also carries on him a Buck 119 special hunting knife clipped to his tool belt as a backup for close quarters combat. Given his industrial background, there aren't many tools he couldn't convert into a weapon, as evidenced by the death of Hollis, a fellow miner, who had 2 nails shot into his brain via nail gun. Even outside of tools, the miner proves proficient with his hands, easily overpowering men his own age. But what really sets the miner apart from his slasher brethren is his theatricality. Every kill is meant to send a message. Several victims' hearts are removed and placed in heart-shaped candy boxes, often accompanied by a handwritten poem. It's not enough for him to take lives, he needs the town to understand why. Unlike many of the mindless monsters that make up the pantheon of slashers, the miner is judge, jury, and executioner, meting out punishment for sins he believes were never properly atoned for. Mabel was killed in her own laundrette. The miner ambushed her while she was alone, driving his pickaxe through her chest before extracting her heart and leaving her body to fry inside one of her dryers. This shows a callousness to the locals he lives alongside, which in turn reveals the scope of his madness, that he could commit such evil acts on those he sees nearly every day. This depravity didn't just extend to the older folk in town. 7 of his own personal friends would fall to his pickaxe that Valentine's Day. What's particularly insidious about the miner's approach is his use of psychological warfare. The heavy breathing through the rebreather mask, the rhythmic clang of the pickaxe against the tunnel walls, and the sudden appearance of his wheat light in the darkness are all designed to maximize terror before he strikes. He's also remarkably patient. Unlike the many single-minded slashers who burst into a frenzy upon the first sight of fresh meat, the miner bides his time, observing, planning, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now, here's where things get interesting. Unlike Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, Harry Warden, or more accurately, the man claiming to be him, doesn't exhibit any overtly supernatural abilities. He's objectively human, flesh and blood, which in some ways makes him even more terrifying, because everything he accomplishes is theoretically achievable by anyone with the right motivation, environment, and mindset. That said, there are a few moments that push the boundaries of what we'd consider normal human capability. First, there's his stealth. The man is capable of moving through the mines, and even some areas outside of it, without being detected until he's ready to strike. In the laundry room, Mabel doesn't hear him coming despite the confined space. During the climax, he appears and disappears to his peers with such frequency that it feels almost supernatural, though it's more likely attributable to his intimate knowledge of the tunnel system and the cover of darkness. Still, there are moments where his ability to vanish borders on the improbable. One of the murders occurs at the secret Valentine's Day dance itself, in the kitchen, meaning he had to slip in and out of both his costume and the building without detection. Either he's an elite escape artist, or there's something more going on beneath the surface. His strength is also worth noting. A lifetime of mining has given him a level of inherent strength that would be hard to replicate, resulting in him easily overpowering, and in some cases, lifting his victims off the ground as if they were playthings. Driving a pickaxe through a human torso requires considerable force, and he does it repeatedly, often with a single swing. Again, not supernatural, but definitely operating at the upper limits of human capability, likely aided by the adrenaline rush of a fresh kill. Finally, there's his pain tolerance. While he doesn't exhibit the bullet sponge durability of other slashers, he does take a significant beating during the final confrontation, and keeps coming. Whether it's from years of working in brutal mining conditions, or the complete psychological break that came with watching his father's heart be torn out and later adopting the Harry Warden identity himself, he shows no visible impairment from injury. He is, in every way, a human pushed to the absolute extreme, physically, mentally, and emotionally. This is best exemplified when he's forced to remove his own arm to free himself from the rubble. He doesn't let out a single noise while doing so, and afterwards, has no trouble speaking clearly when running away. The miner presents a fascinating case when it comes to assessing danger, because unlike slashers with ambiguous or broad victim pools, his targets are very specific. If you're not associated with the Valentine's Day dance, and if you're not perceived as disrespecting the memory of those who died in the Hanager mines, you're probably safe. But if you do fall within his crosshairs, you're in serious trouble. Like with Michael Myers, his patience and unwavering resolve are uncanny. He operates at an elite level that even some supernatural slashers struggle to maintain. His tactical advantage in the mines is overwhelming. If you're unfortunate enough to be trapped down there with him, your odds of survival plummet dramatically. He knows every inch of that underground maze. Even trained law enforcement would struggle in that environment, let alone a group of panicked civilians. Outside the mines, he's still formidable, but not invincible. He operates best under cover of darkness and in areas where he can control the variables. Cornered in broad daylight with nowhere to hide, he becomes more vulnerable. He's strong, he's skilled, but of course he's not superhuman. A coordinated response could, and did, take him down. His psychological impact on the town is severe. The trauma of the original Harry Warden killings in 1961 never truly healed, and the 1981 resurgence ripped those wounds wide open. Even after the impersonator is stopped, the fear will surely remain, lingering in the air like the methane spewing from the mines. However, his narrow focus does work against him from a broader danger assessment. He's not a roaming killer. He's not going to show up in a random town for no reason. His rage is specific to Valentine, Bluffs, and the Hanager mines. Taking all of this into account, his lethality, his tactical brilliance in his preferred environment, his psychological warfare, his specific but intense motivation, and the human limitations he seems to easily overcome, the miner gets a threat level 4. Harry Warden may have died in 1976, but his rage lived on, passed down like a curse to a new victim, one born from Warden's acts of vengeance. And when that impersonator eventually put on the rebreather and coveralls, he made sure to leave an even bigger wound, reigniting the legend of Harry Warden once more. Will another survivor take up the mantle to continue the ballad of Harry Warden? Only time will tell, for the legend, they say, on a Valentine's Day is a curse that will live on and on. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider leaving a like. May not seem like it does much, but it actually does a lot. If you enjoyed the Slasher Collective, I'd recommend subscribing. There's plenty more in store. But before we go, I need to give a personal thanks to our Camp Crystal Lake counselors, Jeremy Dunham, Weiss Belladonna, One Piece Fan 884, Richard McCool 1763, and Shauna Fett, as well as our Elm Street Dream Warrior, Casper Ty Wolfenbarger. Your support helps this channel tremendously. If you'd like to become a member of the Haddonfield Registry, you can join right here on YouTube as a channel member, or head on over to Patreon, link in the description, where you can pick from 3 membership tiers, depending on how involved you want to be with the future of the channel. For the Haddonfield Registry, I'm Mr. October, aka Slasher with an X. Good night.